Hi, it's Scott Allen for the Raw. Let's look at some of the areas the Wallabies should be giving priority to fix after Bledisloe II. First up, it's their exits from their own 22. If we're going to stop these charge down kicks, there has to be an approach from within the team where everybody knows when to exit and what their role in the exit play is. Here, when the Wallabies get a turnover in the first minute of the game, the best option is to get the ball to the All Blacks end of the field immediately, and Mog's in position to do that. Instead, they choose to try and run the ball out from their own 22. It's not as though there was a huge numbers mismatch on that side of the field. It's not a smart play, and it gives the All Blacks the ball in good field position early in the match. Here's another example. Off a line out close to their own try line, the Wallabies actually do quite well with this first phase of the exit play. They've got the ball away from the sideline and they've given the kicker, Matt Tamua, some room to operate in. But then they have no structure in place to try and stop the All Blacks applying pressure. Aaron Smith times his run perfectly, but the Wallabies do nothing to make his life a little bit harder. A simple screen with Moen and Moore in front of Tamua can give him just that little bit of extra time to make a clean kick. The All Blacks had a clear focus on pressuring the Wallabies kickers, and they did a good job. But let's not make it easy for them. Here, Luatua is going to leave the edge of the ruck and doesn't have to run around one single Wallaby to get to Matt Tamua. On the first of Genia's charge downs, Hall is at least in front of Genia, but he's too deep to be an effective screen. That gives Whitelock and Retallick room to move forward and get off the ground, so they're so high there's no way Genia is going to get the ball over the top of them. On his next charge down, there's no screen in place at all, and it's going to be a tight head prop, Owen Franks, who's given unimpeded access to get to Genia and make the charge down. Now I want to look at defence, and whilst the Wallabies certainly had some poor one-on-one tackle misses, I'm more interested in looking at the organisation and structure of their defensive line to find out why line breaks like the one you can see on screen, which is pretty simple, keep occurring, and why the All Blacks seem to always end up with overlaps. The Wallabies getting too much practice at this sort of scrambling defence. So how did they get through the front line on this occasion? Let's start by looking at the spacing between 10, 12 and 13. When you're coaching players about decision making, this is the sort of opportunity you're trying to get them to recognise. If the opposition gives you an invitation like this, take it. Go straight through the middle of them. Don't try and go around them. You really have to question the use of this structure in the first place. But then the players don't seem to be communicating with each other. And as a result, the All Blacks just use a straight runner through the 10-12 channel, and it's left to O'Connor to make another scrambling tackle. Now to some examples of those poor one-on-one misses. And here, the kick chase line is not too bad, but the miss by Moen and Moore just shouldn't happen at international level. And again, we're back to scrambling defence. Yes, it is Israel Dag on two forwards, but these misses shouldn't be made, particularly that one by Moen. In this example, you can see how the Wallabies are getting their numbering wrong. On this side of the field, they've got 5 defenders against 3 attackers. On the far side of the field, they're going to end up with 4 defenders in the front line against 8 attackers. Conrad Smith sees the opportunity, switches sides, and now the All Blacks have got a 9-on-4 on that side of the field. O'Connor's on the end of the line where he should be, but he's going to be left with an impossible situation to try and defend this massive overlap. And once again, the All Blacks are in for a pretty simple try down the right side of the field. In the next example, it's a good inside ball and then offload, which gives the All Blacks half a chance. But again, the Wallabies scramble well in defence. And when we go to the wider shot, you'll see that their defensive line on the next phase is pretty well set, with decent numbers on the far side of the field. As we roll the footage forward here, there's no doubt about who the ball runner is going to be, or the hole that he's going to target. But Alexander and Fardy don't work well enough together to close that hole, and it's left to O'Connor to clean up at the back with a try-saving tackle. The Wallabies are left scrambling again, and they're short on the far side, and Lealifano makes a decision to come forward and try and shut it down. Unfortunately, he doesn't get there, and Mog's left with a 3-on-1, and the cover can't get across in time. Now, I hear some of you asking, where was O'Connor? He should have been defending against Smith. Well, there he is in the ruck, having made the last try-saving tackle. You just can't be in 2 places at once. Now to the Wallabies line-out, where they could only win 64% of their own ball, compared to the 100% they won in Bledisloe I. In the first half of the match, the Wallabies were using lots of movement on the ground to deceive the All Blacks, and that was getting jumpers into free space, as you can see here with Simmons, where he goes up virtually unopposed. The Wallabies won 8 of their first 10 lineouts, but then they started to get a little predictable and use less movement on the ground. In this case, even though there's movement, and the throw is not perfect, it certainly needed to be 20 to 30 centimetres higher, the All Blacks had read what the Wallabies were doing, and Whitelock was up in front of Moen regardless of what happened with the throw. In the next example, the All Blacks read where the ball's going to go. There's very little movement on the ground to deceive them. The throw's delivered exactly where it needs to be, but you can see Whitelock is up in front of Fardy. Let's look at the setup of that line-out, because it was a poor decision to call it to the back in the first place. Whitelock is already in position covering that back throw, and Reid, who will be his front lifter, is not far away from him. So unless you do something on the ground to pull Reid into the middle of the line-out, he's going to be able to turn too quickly and lift Whitelock. Gill's well and truly covered at the front, so he's not an option. Horwell is in some space, so he was an option. But regardless of whether they used Horwell or Fardy, they needed that movement on the ground they were using in the first half to move the All Blacks' defence around and get themselves into some space. Again, in this instance, there's no movement. It just becomes a straight race between Simmons and Reid. Even though the throw's delivered exactly where it needs to be, it's being thrown into a contest, which gives Reid a crack at the ball, and it's a lost line-out. Here's the one line-out in the match that's lost simply due to a poor throw. There's movement on the ground, they're going to come back to Douglas, and even though the timing's not great between jumper and lifters, it's an overthrow by Moore. And finally, here's the first line-out in the match the Wallabies had, and I think even the commentators called this as a poor throw, but as you can see, it's an issue with the lifters not getting Horwell up, not the throw. The Wallabies have improved their line-outs this season, so hopefully last week was just an aberration.